Okay, we're live.
Boom, boom.
Good morning.
What up?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, welcome. We're live.
Coming right back at you at the NPR network.
Yeah, hey, pew, pew, bing, bing, bing. Soundboard. Yeah, we've all been up.
Everybody's gone. No.
Yeah, they're like, oh, shoot, never mind.
Oh, that's great.
It's been a morning, that's for sure.
Yeah, you've had quite the.
Yeah, I've been up earlier than my alarm went off, and I was like, why is my alarm going off? It's my day off. Like, what the hell is wrong? Oh yeah, I've got shit to do. Damn it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so yeah, the vet visit was first on my agenda today, and I'm actually this afternoon after this taking my car in to finally go get fixed after being hit with that sign on the freeway that one night a month ago.
Right.
Yeah, so spending a lot of money today on the vet bill, and then my deductible for insurance, and good thing I got that stimulus check in.
Hopefully some turn,
Yeah. So I've already had my fair share of coffee, needless to say. I did a whole press and I put it in like this big mug that I have that keeps things ridiculously hot. It's one of those Arctic mugs. And it actually has like my logo like etched into it and everything. My good buddy Scott Bolter made it for me. And but it was literally warm up until, a few minutes ago when I finished it, because that thing is so hot I can't drink it for the first like hour it's in that cup. And so I've already had plenty of coffee. I've already driven like 60 miles there. Like, my vet is 25 miles away. So I'm like there and back and stuff in between. And so I'm like, it's 10 o'clock and I feel like I need a nap already.
Wow. You're on my schedule now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be a long one, but at least I have power and at least you can see me because we're in the snake room, which means my breaker's back on, which means the lights are on. At the expense of my garbage disposal, I'll have you know.
Oh my goodness, it's just a mess.
Yeah, it's just the ghetto California living,
You have somebody come out and fix the breaker, or?
Well, so the apartment complex has a maintenance guy who on the side does stuff, and he'll come in. So he's he just swapped out a breaker that ran my garbage disposal for the one that runs literally half of the fucking apartment. Excuse my language. I don't know. It's old, man. It's old. I don't know why they did it that way, but hey, whatever. So we just got to make it work for a little while longer,
Yeah. Our heater is busted in here, and I just found out that's because it's from 1968.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
I bet you the heater that stands up in mine, like one of those wall heaters, is probably almost as old. So,
yeah. All this crumbling California infrastructure, damn it.
Yeah, no kidding.
I know you guys pay enough in taxes. You should be pristine over there.
Well, they're finally fixing our roads. Like our highways and freeways are an atrocity with all the potholes and damage from just roots and trucks and poor construction. So now naturally all of our freeways are a mess with construction, which is equally as awesome. But
gotta love it.
Yeah, it's just I gotta get out of here, man. The other day I was craving like a camping trip or something so badly. Like it doesn't even have to be far or exotic, just getting away,
So I'll tell you what, I stumbled upon this guy on YouTube, and his channel is called, hold on, it's called I think it's called Scott's Walkabout.
Okay.
And I have this, I don't know, I don't know, man. I don't know what it is, but as of recent, as a past year, it's called Scotty's Gone Walkabout.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
So couple things, right? One, he does him and his, I don't know if it's his wife or his girlfriend or whatever, but they camp and they pretty much go through like they're in Alice Springs and they go to Uluru and then they keep going out. And what do you want? Are you watching it?
I'm just like scrolling through the video thumbnails.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm like super jealous. Like, look at man, that's what I need,
dude. And I'll tell you what, it's like I like watching camping people in the U.S., but it's like I'm killing two birds with one stone. It's like I'm watching Australia I'm watching, what the environment looks like to these various places that he's going to. And I'm getting my camping fix. And I'm like, man, I'm so jealous. If I lived in Australia, I'd be camping all the time.
Yeah, dude.
He's like, he just paddles down the river and it's like all quiet and it looks like Jurassic Park around him, Yeah. That's great.
There's this
highly recommend it.
There's this inner like nomad, like granola hippie in me that comes from my mom. My mom used to ride her horse to college in Davis. You know what I mean? Like she would tie her horse up on the tree outside at Davis. Like she was that gal. And that was in the 80s, it's not like, it was when cars weren't around or anything, and so I've always grown up that way where she doesn't want me to stay at home, when she goes somewhere. So she takes me and says, go loose on the hills, don't hurt yourself, don't get lost or anything. So like, that's how I always grew up. And man, I've got friends that like after college, they did grad school, and after grad school, they refurbished a van and like made it livable and traveled and went to Mexico for a while. I have a buddy, one of my housemates from college. He got one of those Honda Pilots and retrofitted it with everything he would need and hit all the continental U.S., including Alaska, and did this whole tour of the United States for a full year and just saw everything. And somebody wrote like a whole magazine article about it, and it's just amazing. And I find myself like, there's this inner version of me that's like, if I'd have never found, these like, the snakes and how you can keep them, and I never found establishment and this and that, I would totally be that guy, like refurbing like a van and living in it and traveling and just.
Dude, there is nothing like road tripping across the country and going and around and back. Like even if you don't have the opportunity to like get out and hike or camp or anything, like just you have to watch like the landscape change gradually, right? Because you're far, like you're not going that fast, and just to like see everything shift across the entire continent, all these like different biomes and habitats. So cool. Like I think the southeast was my favorite like looking area, like Georgia and the little bit of Florida. I got like it's so different. All the like stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah, the Spanish moss and the mangroves and the swamps. Yeah, it's beautiful out there.
But it is something special about that. And to like sleep in a van or something and have it all like set up to just go, that would be sweet.
Yeah, there's something relaxing and peaceful about having zero commitment, zero ties. You're like, what do I got to do today? Nothing.
Dude.
Whatever I want.
Yes. When I retire, that's like the whole like, oh man, I would love it. Can you imagine the herping you could do? With like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like you have a Sprinter van or something, split it so there's like a bunk so you can sleep up top. You got a little couch, a little cooking stove, a burner, so you can just pull over somewhere and like open up the back and live, and then just travel to all these herp spots and go species spotting that you've always wanted to. Like that would be epic. It would be epic. And then
you don't do it in the U.S. You do it in Australia, and that's like this guy's like the icing on the cake for me, because it's like, yeah, the U.S. is cool and everything that's going on and all that, it's great, but now imagine doing it in Australia, which is even in some of those areas is so remote.
Yeah,
and like he's like, I'm looking at the Milky Way tonight, and I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah,
just eating like at the campfire, like
yep. Yeah, that would be cool, man. That would be really cool one day.
But you'll dig it. You should watch his videos, Riley.
I just subscribe.
You will love it. You will love it.
Yeah, I found myself watching because I bought a subscription for Discovery Plus the other day because it has a few shows that I wanted to watch. But I was scrolling through, and it's got tons of Australian wildlife and Australian nature shows and all sorts of stuff. So I subscribed to a bunch of that and put them on my list so I can go back and watch it. And I was watching one the other day that's just Australia Wild, and it was showing like dingoes and kangaroos and how these grasshoppers change color when the storms are coming, and how the Aborigines noticed that thousands of years ago, and just talking about all this wildlife. And it was just, man, I just, at the very least, I have these shows that I can watch to kind of get lost in, but man, yeah, I really need to get out there. It's plaguing me. I have like dreams about it. It like haunts me at work.
Me too.
people come and they talk about all their trips. They're like, oh yeah, I did this and this. I'm like, son of a bitch.
You guys ice cream. I'm losing my mind.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping tomorrow I go into work and there will be blackhead eggs.
Blackhead
and then the Loma shortly after. Yeah.
Something.
Real quick, the video you should watch, the first one should be called Van Life Around the Aussie Outback.
Okay.
Van Life Around the Aussie Outback. Yeah.
All right.
How far back is that one? Oh, there it is. I found it.
Yeah. Put that one as your first one. It's him and his girl, and they do that. They're in a van, front, little stove in the van and all. And dude, it's crazy.
That's got to be so freaking cool. I want that.
All right, we got a question from Sean Porter real quick. He's saying, looking for a jungle female. Any suggestions for a breeder?
Yeah. Yeah. Owen just got a clutch of eggs. So
yeah, man, that female is nice.
Yeah.
That's the scattershot stuff. And
so Owen will have babies. Andrew Paris is always a fantastic individual for getting jungles. David Haston. Who else? There's a lot of people. Scott Borden when he produces stuff.
Yep. Trying to think who else.
Obviously, Nick produces jungles. Stephen Katz produces jungles. Mike Curtin produces jungles.
He's got some nice clutches going too this year. So you should be able to find some cool stuff. So hit them up and you should be good.
I think the only jungle clutch I'll be getting this year will be a zebra to zebra clutch repeat from 2019. So we'll see. I love it when you have a female that's gone multiple times and you can see the pattern of when she produces, because she, like, depending on when she sheds, her cycle might be exactly to the day as it was 2 years ago when she produced.
Wow.
If she sheds in 5 days, which might be perfectly on time with how she's looking. Oh yeah, Martin Roseman's another good jungle producer.
I forgot about that.
She might have her clutch exactly on the same timeline. I'll be interesting to see if this clutch is a train wreck like the last one, because it's a zebra to zebra clutch. They're unrelated zebras, but we know how that stuff works. And 2 years ago, the clutch I got was like 13 eggs, and by the time incubation was over, I only had 7 viable eggs left. So we'll see.
For sure.
Yeah.
How's the Brettles going?
Well, they're both hidden under the hide at the moment. They're both kind of darken and shed, so I think they're just kind of going to shed out in the next few days, but I'm just leaving them together for right now.
Perfect.
And then kind of going to gauge it as I see fit. They both have taken 2 meals, so they're
on their way.
They're left alone to do their thing if they want. If I got them cold enough, that'll be the big mystery.
Right.
So
that's awesome.
And then the Citrus Tiger gal is due to drop her clutch in 1 week from today. Today is day 23. So we'll see. She comes out periodically, sits on the lights because they're warm, and then goes back. Yeah, she's been getting that pretzely, uncomfortable, restless sort of behavior going on. So hopefully soon. And then the Karibo is getting restless. She's due to drop a clutch in, I think, 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks. So
cool. So what do you think your total clutches will be this year?
Well, so I've got the 1 pop 1 clutch. If this small dark female produces, that'll be second. The zebra third. I've got a prelay from the Exanic Coastal, so that should be number 4. Citrus Tiger number 5, and if the Bredli go, that'll be 6. So,
nice.
Potentially 6 clutches this season. So, got to fill up that new hatchling rack I shelled out for. Got to justify that purchase.
That's right.
Yeah. So,
pay for it.
Yeah. No shit. I need a good year this year, man. I really do. I just keep trying to get ahead, and then I get knocked back, and it's usually like car issues or a vet bill or something. I need to get ahead. And then the other thing that's on my mind a lot, I think about, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about this at all, is is, you know, prioritizing with space and I, you know, like at heart, I'm a collector and I want to have all the Morelia, but can I feasibly do that? And I also have these other species in projects, you know, and, you know, I see my adult big rainbow girl shed last night. I'm like, you're freaking amazing. And then I'm like, but I haven't, like, what am I doing? You know, like I don't have room. Like there's so much I want to keep, but I can't keep it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely the struggle.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that as well. Just kind of looking at everything I have here and knowing why I have it here, if that makes sense. Like trying to make sure that I have a reason for everything. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah. Well, I envy your trajectory. You started at a much more like mentally aware and awake point. And you started with a small quality number of animals and you've grown at a small healthy rate where everything has room for its adult enclosures as is, and you didn't go crazy head over heels like a lot of people.
Working at the vivarium actually helped, I think, right? Because it was kind of right during that phase where I wanted everything, but I could just work with everything at work and then leave. Instead,
you didn't seem to go through a Noah's Ark syndrome as bad.
Yeah, I had my rosy boa, I had my ball python. I did try a couple things that I just decided weren't it. You know,
that's healthy. Everybody's got to do that. That's part of everybody's like exploration bell curve of the reptile journey, right?
Yeah. It could have been a lot worse. I got I got through it. Not too bad.
Yeah, I guess the limiting factor is your time, money, and space. And like if you've got the space, you slowly accrue stuff and fill it up. But eventually, you only have so much time. But then I don't know. I can always make time for stuff, but I can't make more space.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you could especially just start digging down and make a little like subterranean secret bunker.
Yeah, let's dig my grave right next to it as well, and I'll let Rachel know when it's done so she can kill me and throw me in it.
Part of my struggle now is like trying to figure out, it's trying to cut space, and then when you cut everything that like cutting the Jags out was a big thing, right? So that was easy. It just didn't matter what it was. The only one I kept was the Gamma Jag, right? I just kept it because it's just a beautiful snake. You know what I mean? So, but it's I don't have any intentions on breeding it or anything like that. But so that was easy, and that cut out a big chunk of animals. But then I look at baby rack, and I'm like, I have all these like, holdbacks and stuff, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to do this. And then how much I love selling snakes, so it's like, should I just wholesale this stuff? Should I just I don't
burked a few clutches, didn't you?
Yeah, quite a few. And then I think about like like stuff like I have an adult, so okay, I have adult caramel zebra, I have an adult caramel granite zebra, I have an adult super caramel super zebra, and like to me I'm like kind of like past the morph thing, like, but part of me is sort of like, I know if I get rid of this, am I going to regret it? Am I going to like, I'm just trying to like figure out like where my thing is at, because then I look at like my Papuan projects, my Papuan carpet pirate projects, there's so many varieties, and it's like, do I just want to focus on this? Am I at the point now where it's like, I'm not going to have all the morphs and stuff, and I just want all the subspecies, and I'd much rather have, an Australian couple monitors and a couple Australian gag, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm getting a blue tongue from,
nice
from Justin.
Nice. You're going to love those, dude. You're going to freaking love blue tongues, man.
I know. And it's just, so I think I'm at the point where it's like, I'm going to start to get rid of cross morph stuff and make sure it gets into the hands of people that are actually going to do something with it,
Sure.
And kind of focus on subspecies, and like I'll still keep the hypos, I'll still keep tigers, because to me they're not, I know they're a morph, but they're kind of different.
It's a pure coastal. I mean? It's not like a crazy, wacky science project sort of feel to it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I just don't see a push as much for carpet python morphs as much as it was, or I'm just out of the paying attention to it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I wonder, like I was thinking the other day, I was like, it seems like nobody cares about carpet python morphs anymore. And I'm like, well, maybe it's me that doesn't care about
right.
morphs anymore. Maybe it's not everybody else. It's just me.
I think there are still people that care. I think people go through different waves of caring about it in their Morelia trajectory within keeping reptiles. And I think the more attention that Morelia gets, the more people are coming into it. The influx of new people and emphasis on morphs or pure or crosses or whatever will happen. But I think, you're right. You're probably seeing things through your lens with some of your perspective bias on it.
Right.
I struggle with this all the time. I think about that a lot. What were you going to say, Lucas?
It seems like, just going off of what I've heard you say over the years, and correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe your mindset on that has kind of changed as a result of the Australia trips and like seeing things in the wild. And, I guess that's kind of what I got a little bit from your Animals at Home episode, was kind of seeing things in the wild made you appreciate those natural phenotypes a little bit more than the morph stuff. Yeah.
And it's like, I came back and it's, Nick, I got there was a package that came with my rough scale female from Nick, and Owen had a Maclots in there. We were laughing about that project just real quick, but like Owen's Maclots project is the vein of his existence, Dude, and I'm like,
been just a train wreck since day one.
I'm like, you're going at this again? And he's like, I won't give up. I'm like, all right, man, more power to you, bro. So I was telling Nick, and I was like, I need a female Darwin because I have so many males, and I'm like, I need a female. I have a female. I have one female and I have 4 males. So one of those males is going to get cut. And then I needed a female so that, if I want to breed it or whatever. So I hit up Nick, and he sent me this tiger. Well, hold on. You guys talk for a second.
Yeah. Oh, he's gonna go get it.
We haven't shown off snakes here.
He gonna go get it. Yeah. It's hard to show off snakes on this because we're also going to take the audio and put it into a file. And when you start getting into the visual, what happens is that's when the audio silence happens and you get these random like lapses of nothing.
Yeah.
And so for our listeners, that's no bueno. For our viewers, that's fantastic. And so for me, I'm very cognizant of that. So for our listeners, you should definitely try and catch the lives, because then you can see these things.
Yes.
Even as much as there is value in going back and looking and watching the video, you can see it. But
not to mention our beautiful faces.
What's this wee stuff you're talking about? Have you seen this? Ain't no beauty up in here.
Look at the stripe on this.
Ooh.
That's one of those Darwin, the tiger line Darwins, right?
Yeah.
Damn.
That's nuts. That's beautiful.
Nick sent you that?
So yeah.
Wow.
That's gorgeous.
I just love her cut. It's almost like, I don't know. It's like Popwin. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's got that caramely yellow chocolate color.
I love how, all of a sudden at the tail, it seems to change from the one cut. Like it seems like the dark is here, but then you look at her tail and it's like it reverses.
That's such a Darwin thing. I see it in other lines and other phenotypes, but the front is dark and the back is lighter.
Yeah.
When you hatch Darwins, you'll see that a lot of the time too. You'll see the two-tone in babies. I've seen clutches where they're darker brown up front and they fade towards the back. It's weird. My male is like that. My female is like that.
That's a beautiful snake. Yeah, it's cool how the stripe is just on the dorsal, and then on the sides you still kind of have the dots.
One day, if I'm ever successful with breeding my pair of Darwins I have enough to justify continuing to have Darwins, I would like to eventually get some of his tiger albino stuff. when I have more space. But for right now, I can't even breed them. So it's like.
So this girl, I'll real quick show you the boy that she would go with, and you'll see.
All right.
Deo Darwins, y'all. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think part of my failure is young, unconfident animals. My female is just gonna be 6 this year, I think.
Okay.
So I've tried her the last 2 years with no success. And the male, he started out young. He was very shy. He was a mouser, didn't eat for a long time, so he was very behind. He's actually a year older than her. And only in the last year has his confidence shot back up, and he's taking rats, and he's a good size, and he's more than willing to breed and lock up, but they just haven't produced, even though we've been here for 3 years in this current snake room. So
interesting.
Wow.
That's nice.
Wow.
Yeah, look at this.
That one seems a little bit more like
that's nuts.
Vibrant
dude.
To me. The light colors.
Yeah, so that's like
popping.
That's got that really nice high contrast with the background is nearly black in some spots, especially by the dorsal. Killer stripe, reduced pattern. But the smudged out black head, that Darwin head with like minimal.
You can see what I'm talking about. Look, it's dark. And then it's see the difference? It's like two snakes in one.
Yeah. It's like the opposite of Bredli, where they're lighter up front. And yeah. You see that with the Darwins for sure. It's cool.
It's gorgeous.
That's a killer snake. See, that's the type of stuff that's like, well, I guess I still need to have everything.
Ryan Cox said, somebody pair that with a stonewashed.
Get out of here, Ryan. Get out of here with that nonsense. Speaking of nonsense hybrids, somebody was posting that they were at Nerd and like they had a fun day at Nerd, and they posted a photo of some albino red-tailed boa locking up with a green anaconda. I was like,
Why do you people do this?
My face is just like, that's an abomination. No, no.
Yeah, no, I don't like that.
Yeah, that's a no. Brandon
I do
Valentine.
know somebody that was trying to do a boa anaconda hybrid as well. And somebody take a fall.
The gravid female Crebo just fell off that damn lip in the. Another reason why I hate vision cages is that damn lip right above the glass.
I heard that. Dunk.
She's gravid. She needs to go sit in the moss and not do that.
Stop damaging her eggs.
Is he asking if the one that is Brandon asking if my Darwin is pure?
Yeah, and it's from Nick. It's not from Psychotic Exotics, right?
No, that came from actually I got that one from Martin.
Oh, is that one of those RSA line Darwins?
Yeah,
Republic of South Africa.
Yeah,
those ones are cool. Darwins are neat. Yeah, I need to justify future Darwins. If I can breed them, then I'll be like, okay, this project stays. But as space gets to a premium, every project that isn't panning out is like,
yeah. Darwins have never been one of the subspecies that really called to me for some reason. I've always been like, oh, those are cool, but the two that you just showed are like, holy shit, like that was another level. So,
and when you see a big one too, it's like, damn.
Oh yeah, we were talking to Pete Kuhn over the weekend, right? Python Pete, as people would know, and after talking to him, that the conversation was good, but it's more of a herp history type of thing more than anything. Just not really talking about how he cared for anything or anything like that. But like, for one, he talked about some of the jungles and where he sort of got his jungles from. And at the time he was talking about how they would just go and buy whatever carpet they had, right? Whatever one was there, they would buy and then try to, take it in a direction, like living art or whatever. Right. And it really sort of gave me a snapshot of like where jungle carpets were and then like kind of where they went. So it makes me feel good about working with some of the other species or subspecies, or who knows what they're going to be when they're once the book comes out. Right. But like, it makes me feel that like if enough focus was put on those other subspecies, that you would probably have amazing, like the Darwins would probably be as amazing as jungle carpets are with their yellow and black. You know what I'm saying? So like, but nobody's really put forth a focus on that. And I think that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know if that's like Keith's influence on me when like talking to him for hours and hours about like how he would approach his short tail projects and stuff, where it was not really a morph, but it was more of like a selective breeding thing. And he would sort of look at, these little traits and try to work them out. And then you see where it went. And you look at like Matt's, extreme marbles and shit. Like, you know what I mean? It's like that was his vision where he saw some specks on a snake, and then Matt took it to the next level. And I just think if people focused more on like inlands and Darwins and IJs and stuff like that, you'd probably see. I think IJs are starting to show it. You're starting to see that, but I think Darwins and inlands are still lagging behind.
Yeah, I'm loving the freaking inlands. I want more inlands. They're so cool.
Yeah, I told you. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. When they shed that first time, I was like, holy crap. Cause they're kind of right at that age where every shed is going to be a different snake for a while,
Yes.
And the blue really came out in that last one, and it was wild. Yeah. I finally feel like I got a picture where you can see it a little bit. The blue sheen, but it's so freaking hard to capture.
Yeah.
Ian's Birkin his clutch.
Good, Ian.
Yes. Excellent.
All these
now a verb.
Birking, wheelering. We're creating the Morelia dictionary here.
Yes.
There's still those subspecies and species out there that I need where it's like, I still want to experience keeping those, but I don't want to get rid of anything that I have at the moment.
Yeah.
It's like this trade-off. So right now I'm kind of like in this pause moment until hopefully I get more space, and then I'll be like, all right, I don't have the space problem. Now I can just look forward to getting the last few things. But I'm happy with what I have, and I don't know. I constantly am thinking about like my legacy and what I want to do with the animals I have, what I want to leave behind, what I want to be known for, if anything. Do I want to even be known? Like what legacy are we leaving behind with the animals we work with? Keith's work with the Bloods was foundational, and Short Tails was foundational for a lot of that, niche within the hobby. And now he's doing that with Bolins and other species, and he's moving on. And, when is it a good time to move on? When is it right for somebody to move on? Do you move on?
Yeah.
I mean, life gets in the way, so you got to respond, of course, but
yeah. It's, I don't know, man. I think it's about, we talk about it all the time on whatever podcast you're listening to us on, but it's sort of that idea is like, do what you love and don't worry about what other people think and all that kind of stuff. And I think like taking a little bit of my own advice, it's kind of like, I want to be able to go into if I think about it, right, every time that I am wowed by somebody's snake room, it's somehow these zoo quality setups and a chair or a couch where the person goes and chills out and just enjoys the animals for what they are, sees these crazy behaviors and all that stuff. You know what I mean? That's what I want to do. And it's like, I think like for me, I was sort of not pushed, but like the hobby was just focused on breeding. And, that's why I'm like jealous of you, Lucas, because you're like at the infancy where you can sort of pick your direction and, right. You're sort of getting the best of both worlds to where you're getting, if you wanted to focus on, behaviors and natural setups and all this kind of stuff, you're good. But then you also have the influence from like, from Nick and Riley and I and Owen and whatever. And like being a breeder and like what that entails, so
I'm trying to do both. I like the hybrid model, like quality breedings, but with this kind of setup, why not? It'll mean that I don't have 300 snakes,
right?
But that's okay.
But the one thing you will have to do is you'll have to, come to terms internally with yourself on your style of keeping, because inevitably we live in a very public world, and so you have to mentally come securely clean with who you are and what you're keeping and why.
Exactly.
So you can be ready to take whatever sort of either biased or well thought out or not thought out sort of criticism or critique, and because it's going to happen one way or the other. And you just got to understand that, like, what you want with your animals is what's going to dictate how and why. And if you're always thinking about how to do better within that, then you're always on the right path.
Yeah. And like you say, there's, as we know very well, there's always going to be people, especially in this hobby, that think what you're doing is garbage and want to let you know.
Sure.
Just because for whatever reason, that's what people do. So, that the whole, if you have haters, you're doing it right kind of thing, might apply to an extent.
Yeah, to a degree, a small degree. You got to be able to, manage it to a small amount, but there is a fine line where you shouldn't have to put up with crap. And so then it just depends on, how much you want to tolerate based on what you're involved in. Like with YouTube, right. It's mostly supportive and positive comments when I put out these informative videos, but every once in a while I get somebody who probably has seen a carpet python somewhere at a zoo in this big lush enclosure and is like, why are you keeping them like that? You should keep them with perches and this and that. How dare you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, they're not trying to bash and they're not trying to be negative, but they don't understand what they're saying and why they're saying and the perspective of what they're seeing and how it's not the same. And so putting yourself out there is just kind of inevitably you catch a bunch of shit and flack from people who mean well or don't. And
right. You do have to know that very well may come and
yeah. And you got to ask how involved you want to be with it, and you might try it out and find out it's not for you. And like everything's ever changing. Right. So, I don't know.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, of course, right. Like Eric, you've been putting yourself out there for about a decade, and I'm sure you've had a lot of people come and poop on your Cheerios.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Of course.
It's just kind of part of it, and it's something that,
yeah. It's kind of like you just have to accept that not everybody is going to like you. Not everybody's going to see the way that you see. And you have to sort of like be able to tune that out and focus on the people that are getting something from you, like, and just kind of like keep that in your forefront. Cause it can be extremely frustrating. It can be, it can be depressing. It can be, it's like, you feel like you're doing a service for people and like, like everybody that used to complain about the sound, and like, it's like, what the fuck? Do you think I don't know that the sound sounds like shit? Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, do you think I don't know that? Do you think you have to tell me that? Like, again, like I already know that, bro. Like,
you're getting this is free podcast. Complain.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. When I listen to reptile radio, I never once in my whole time thought, it sort of came along with it. Like, okay, this is what it is. And I'm sure over time, the more and more that people do this, the better quality it's going to get. What amazes me is that today there's still people that have shitty sounding podcasts. And some of those people were the same people that criticized NPR back in the day. And I'm like, woo, not looking in the mirror there, bro.
Oh, man.
But
yeah, it's interesting how the reptile hobby has become more of a social media stance sort of thing. It's all about posturing yourself. I the more I go on about it, the more I envy folks like Gary Valle who have this notoriety about them, but you'll never see them online. Love that. That.
It's kind of good and bad, right? Like you have new people coming into the hobby constantly.
Right.
But you have people that have been into the hobby for a while and probably have the knowledge or experience, and they're sort of like turned off by it because, they're just like, this is not what I wanted to get into this for. I wanted to get into this because I have a passion for these animals, and it's sort of like, it pushes them away. So like the new keepers that are coming in really don't have the exposure to to some of those people, you know.
Right. That's like the main reason why I keep my YouTube channel going, is because as much as the nonsense and stuff I hate is prevalent and very much there, there are so many people that are finding out about carpets or this section of the hobby through YouTube. And if there isn't anybody else out there putting out good, you know, somewhat relevant information on carpets for the masses, even if I do, you know, sort of dumb it down a little bit or cookie cutter it or focus on something in particular, there really isn't anybody else out there, you know, being a voice for these snakes. And that's kind of the big thing keeping me going on it. And that's kind of the big thing why I love doing all this work for the network, because it is such a Morelia focus with a huge platform that we get constant feedback about how beneficial it is for people and how much people are learning about the species and the genus and just all this stuff. And so like that in itself is tons of value. And I just think, you know, with the constant influx of new people, that's where, like, you guys always talk about those breeding episodes, even though you've done one every single year, it's still valuable because there are new people just coming in that might not have found the older episodes and new information changing and all this stuff. And so, you know, you just kind of have to put blinders on with you know, some of the bullshit and just keep going for the greater good, because there are people. I almost feel like it's like a duty of mine to the people who came before me, who have written the books about Morelia, the ones who don't want to be on social media because it's so toxic, the people who've done the test breeding and found all this foundational information, but they don't want to be on the social media side for obvious reasons. So I almost feel like in the whole spirit of preserving that information and honoring their legacy and the work they've done and preserving that, one of the ways to preserve and continue that information and keep it existing is to pass it on through the more common consumed forms of media, which right now happens to be YouTube, Instagram, all this other stuff. And so it's just, you got to take all that other stuff on the chin and, you know, just remember that there are people, even if they don't necessarily comment on every video or post or whatever, there are people that do appreciate it and do like it and do get, you know, a lot of, you know, information out of it, even if they don't necessarily say it. You just kind of have to trust your gut and just go with it and just do it. Because, like, you know, getting back to legacy, I think anybody in their right mind would argue that Eric, you and Owen have created a pretty serious legacy with NPR. And, you know, you talk about it every time. Everybody thought it was too narrow of a focus and it wouldn't do anything. And here you are 10 years later with a fucking media platform, you know, like a whole network. So, it's just one of those things where, like, if it started for the right reason and there's good intention behind it and you have the support and the mental wherewithal to push through it, something good will come of it in the end, even if it's just for a handful of people. And, you know, that's worth it.
For sure.
Yeah. It's like you're sort of, you know, there's so many people that I was exposed to, that I felt that they didn't get the spotlight that they deserved. And that's sort of like where NPR came from. You know, it's sort of like this idea that, like, man, these, not only are they knowledgeable about the species that they keep, you know, they're also awesome people, you know, and people that I never would have known in my regular day-to-day life. I never would have been exposed to that. And, like, I don't know, for me, I like being around different things, experiencing different things. And I think it gives you a better perspective of life, you know, like if you become more open-minded to things and you look at the world a different way. And, you know, so I don't know, that was kind of the whole thing. And, you know, you're right. People, you know, the people that told me that, oh, that's too narrow of a niche, man. Well, they're gone. You know, they're they quit after, you know, 7 episodes and such. And you know, the focus for me, I think us with platforms like this sort of have the responsibility to sort of try to accentuate the positive. And I know this is maybe, you know, we talked earlier about our inner hippies coming out, but maybe that's my inner hippie. Maybe I'm more hippie than I thought I am. But, like, I think of I just think that if you focus on the positive, people will just gravitate towards that rather than focusing on the negative. And I think of it this way, right? If I go into work, right, I'm the boss, right? I walk into work and I go around, and if I'm positive with people, hey, how's it going today? How you doing? Everything cool? Hey, you know, what happened with this? Then they respond back. They immediately respond back in a positive way. And I've had more people tell me, like, you know, man, I was in a really shitty mood today, but the fact that you came in, you said hello to me, you remembered that my dog was going to the vet the other day, and like you asked me how it was doing, and man, that meant the world to me. And like, you know what I mean? I don't know. It just you see that, you know, and I think it's easier, and NPR was guilty of this. It's easier to just bitch about something for 2 hours.
Well, right? It's human nature.
Yeah.
To focus 100%. On the negative. Yeah.
Right. Because people are going to want to hear about it. And then like, if you sort of want to focus on the positive about the animals, that takes research and time and, you know,
and actual passion. You can't really fake
Correct.
that. You can't fake that for very long.
Yeah. Right. You can't. Right. The love of reptiles shows in your
and that's why it's so
actions.
Contagious.
Yeah, you can't fake it. Yeah,
because when you find that, it's refreshing. You know, and it's exhilarating for people that feel the same way. Like, I completely agree. I feel like everything that we can put out there that is positive is working towards kind of shifting the narrative about what the reptile hobby is. What it is at a time where it's so critical to shift that narrative, you know, like,
well, think about what we're doing right now. We're just a little slice, just a little piece of the bigger picture, right? We're using technology, we're communicating, we're sharing information, we formed communities, we've created networks. The narrative has definitely shifted in the last 20, 30 years. You know, the reptile keepers used to be seen as tattooed, bar brawling biker guys, you know, and
2 out of 3. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's just ruffians, you know. And now, like, there's still those people in it, but there's such a much more like educated, classy aspect and informed portion of it now, where it pays to be intelligent about this, and so it comes across as a good hobby that gets you thinking, and I don't know, it's less taboo, and with that means it's also more seen by the public mainstream, which is where you're saying, you know, we have this platform, we sort of have a responsibility to be a good, positive voice. You know, it's good to be informed with all the nonsense and drama and news, so you know what to avoid and other people's mistakes you can learn from and this and that. But it's also good to just not even go down that road. Like, be aware of it, but if you've got a platform, you know, do nothing but good stuff with it. Don't focus on that stuff, because if the more time you spend talking about negative things, the more time you name drop somebody who's doing something negative, you perpetuate that negativity and those actions, no matter what they are. And so if you just don't acknowledge verbally that they exist in that moment, you're creating more of a time capsule for positive stuff to be, you know, revisited again in the future.
Right.
Like, it's good to not repeat history. Like, nobody wants to do X, Y, and Z that these people did, right? So it's good to know that. But at the same time, like, pushing forward is all about pushing forward.
Sure. And you can always point that kind of stuff out without needing to throw the actual people under the bus, right? It's more about the lesson than the perpetrator, if you will.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
So,
because the thing is, we've all made mistakes doing this. You know, we've all, you know, unfortunately for me and Owen, some of those mistakes were on air, you know, and it's like, you can't go back and take them back. It's not that we didn't have, you know, like, I think just, and it's nothing that's even like that serious, but just think about, like, when me and Owen started, the way we fed, you know, the way we approached feeding, like, and like, it just over time, after you start to talk to the people and, like, you know, you start to say, okay, and you're putting together in a way. I'm very, you know, lucky. I mean, yeah, the work is a lot of work, but I'm lucky to be able to have talked to so many different people that keep, you know, what I love, carpet pythons, and be able to formulate my own mix of all those different ideas and thoughts and, you know,
Yeah.
which it just became what I do, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
But
see, I love what you're explaining about like the early days of NPR. Like, I love that that's there, because what you ended up doing is capturing your evolution as a keeper in audio recordings for a decade.
Yeah.
And it's like, it can be a blueprint in a way for
Right.
like how,
Yeah.
you know, like somebody as experienced and knowledgeable as you know, like, where did you start and where did you end up and how did that happen? Like, it's all there if you listen to the archive. And I think it's pretty cool to see how you shifted and improved and changed. And you know, there's something beautiful about that being out there in the world. And you know, you didn't try to bury the old days or whatever, you know, like I've always been perfect. Like, no, nobody is. So like, that's great. You know, that's excellent.
That's a great example of what I meant earlier when I said like the legacy we leave behind. Like if you were to put it all in perspective, is it more positive? Does it contribute something? Is it going to help the people who came behind you? You know, like I think that's if people keep that in their focus and what they're doing and what they love, regardless of whether it's reptiles or working on cars or playing music or selling land or farming, whatever it is, you know, do your thing, like just, you know, own it and love it. And I think, you know, if you leave a legacy of something that's trying to make a change for the positive, it will, you know, sort of have a ripple effect in that way. And so I think about, you know, if the reptile hobby still exists in 20, 30 years, what the kids that are just being born now or haven't been born yet are going to experience, and will they have access to the archives of information? If it's in a book, probably. Digital stuff, who knows what's going to happen, but at least you've put it out there and captured it, and people will always be able to, you know, you're going to be a name, you know what I mean? Like you're going to be a Pete Call, a Eugene Becerra, whatever, to the next generation if you put in the work and leave something behind for them to remember. And so NPR is exactly one of those things.
Which is crazy to me.
I know. It's and it's crazy because you're in that moment, but you're also having that like outside, like retrospective sort of perspective on it. And it's crazy.
Yeah.
And then
so many cool things to come too, to add on top of that. I can't wait for our herp documentaries.
Oh man.
That's going to be pretty freaking next level.
Our first trip out to the East Coast, Lucas and I invade the Philly herp scene and go herping and see the collection and film some stuff. And
I think Riley's most excited about the cheesesteaks.
Yes. We'll do an entire video just visiting different cheesesteakeries.
Yes.
And
Riley
rank
cheesesteaks.
We'll go. Here's what we'll do. We'll go buy like 5 of them, and then we'll sit down and we'll just do a panel.
Oh my god!
and then we'll do Owen's
for 3 days until you can move again.
And then we'll do Owen's Bigfoot spice rubs. We'll do those finally. We'll have a barbecue evening. We'll film some stuff. We'll do it live, maybe.
Good. Bigfoot spice rubs. Hell yeah.
Yeah. We'll do it live or something on the channel. We'll just have some fun. But I want Philly cheesesteaks to no end. I want Bigfoot sauce taste testing. We'll do some collection filming. We'll talk about some projects. We'll go out herping.
Oh, it's gonna be freaking glorious.
I can't freaking wait.
And then you guys come here and we can do the West Coast version.
Before we move on, big shout out to Jeremy over at Omerta Genetics. He got his first clutch of carpet python eggs. He got some albino Darwin in action. Nice. And he got 13 eggs, 10 of which are good and 3 infertiles. And he posted photos of that this morning. He announced it in here. And awesome. You're welcome, man. Glad you have success up to this point, and I wish you success in the incubation window and hatching and all that good stuff. And you're gonna get your feet wet with difficult baby feeders real quick.
But congrats, that's fantastic.
I have to also put up real quick, Craig, my I guess my UK Papuan brother.
Oh yeah.
He I thought this was interesting. See, this is the kind of stuff that I love, right? He placed a small rat outside his F1 female's maternal incubation box last night. She came out within minutes, dragged it back into her box, and she was able to maneuver it so it didn't touch the eggs.
Wow.
Like, I mean,
that's awesome.
That's just I don't know.
Do you feed when you have moms on eggs, Eric? Have you ever offered food during that? Or Riley, either way?
No. I haven't tried, but I've heard plenty of folks doing it. I remember a few years ago, Ryan Dumas did it with the Jag he was doing MI with, and she took a small rat while around the clutch, grabbed it, ate it, wrapped it, and went back.
That's so cool. Interesting.
Yeah, I would imagine. So I don't know. What do you guys think of the wild? Do you think that if prey comes by, that they would take advantage of that, or do you think that they would sort of be focused on making sure that their eggs hatch?
I think they'd be too focused to eat personally. I think the presence of even a small rodent would be stressful for a female on a clutch of eggs. I think when they're in that state, other than that initial trance phase when they're first laying, I think they're hyper vigilant, and I feel like they would just be in full defense mode all the time.
Right.
But what do I know? I'm not a wild carpet.
I didn't either.
Shit, damn it.
It's all speculative bullshit.
No, it's a great question though. I do wonder. I wonder too if it's different, species that brood underground versus in tree hollows. Maybe I could see like maybe more of a prey abundance in the underground areas.
Sure.
But maybe that's not real. I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, they're laying eggs around end of winter, early springtime, so there might be prey abundant.
So one of the main reasons why I never did it is I think I was talking to Jason Balin one time about maternal incubation, and I think it was at a Carpet Fest or something. So it was like a pretty in-depth talk that we were having, and I was asking him like what, again, like being nervous about what do you do, how do you do it, and he just sort of said the same thing that we always kind of say. It's just like, nah, just let her do her thing, man. And, to somebody that doesn't know what they're about to go into, that just seems like not a good enough answer. Right. At least to me at the time, it felt like, no, man, you're leaving out pertinent information that I need, and you're not telling me, and I don't know why you're not telling me. And he's shaking me going, Eric, the mom will take care of everything. Don't worry about it, Yep. But he used to say to me that he doesn't feed because I think it was him or somebody he knew, somebody from the MP days had done that, did the maternal incubation, fed the female while she was on the eggs, but then ended up shitting all over the eggs, which then ruined the eggs. So,
Interesting.
So
probably something that the snake should have known not to do, but
right.
They're not all perfect.
Yeah, there's good moms and there's bad moms.
Yeah.
My Xanac Coastal last year, she scattered her eggs all over the fucking cage. Like she had tons of room. Didn't even try to beehive them. I was like, oh, all right. Well,
so
thanks.
What do you think? What do you think? So like this would be a question, right, that I would ask, right? It's like these questions that come up with breeding carpet pythons, right? And you'll hear from time to time people say like, oh, she scattered the eggs all over, with green trees. It's like she laid them in the water bowl, and like or she it's like she just dumped them off the perch or whatever, like she was hanging and she just blop 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 blop. But like I don't know, do you think that there's a reason why like something isn't right? Do you think there is in tune? Like I think of monitors right now that I'm in seeing this world in this perspective, whereas like if their nest box isn't exactly right, or they're not going to lay eggs, or they're going to have issues, or I don't know, what do you think? You think there's something to that, or you think it's just random mom doesn't know how to be a mom?
It certainly could be a product of coming up in an unstimulating captive environment where they just haven't had to develop cognitively very much, maybe the inherent challenges of the wild actually make smarter snakes.
Or less picky snakes. They just they take what they get and they're just like screw it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you think what's that thing with people babies? Like if you don't talk to them, they get messed up or something. Like those pathways form.
Yeah.
Via environmental stimuli, right? So I'm sure that while we're talking about a completely different brain, it probably is kind of the same idea where you have to be stimulated, stressed, you know, to
experience stuff, learn it,
become more intelligent. But I don't know. It also could totally be just the whole thing of like, not everybody in nature is meant to survive, and some creatures that eat eggs have to live too. I don't know. What do you think, Riley?
I think you're dead on. I think it's probably a result of captivity. I would be shocked to see an animal that's in the wild devote so many resources, time, and energy in making eggs and just go whatever. Good luck.
Right.
Like,
well, even especially with something that incubates the eggs, right?
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's probably a product of captivity and the environment provided for the individual animal.
For sure. Yeah.
This is also a good point that Ryan brought up. A bad mom wouldn't pass genes on; those eggs would most likely die. So
true.
The artificial selection of captivity definitely leads to animals that would have died otherwise.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And you know, the stereotypies, you know, of being trapped in a cage and doing the same thing to self-stimulate, you know, they might be so caught up in that they just don't think to incubate their eggs. I don't know.
Yeah, right. It's I don't know. It's like Ian was saying something about basically we have this idea that we have to save every baby, and like I never subscribed to that idea. Like I don't know. But people have a hard time with saying I'm culling this or I'm culling that. You know, it's that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. You know.
Yeah,
but I love Jack Oliver's comment. Talk to your children so they don't get real stupid like.
It's exactly the accent I read it in my head too.
Oh, good. Yeah. No, but totally. You know, I am of the mind where if something pops out from my clutches that's clearly just kind of like the one that wasn't supposed to make it, I'll toss it to a blackhead. That's fine. I'll toss it to a falsie. I'm cool with that. Recycle that nutrients and keep my stock more fit.
Yeah.
That benefits everybody. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a win-win, except for that poor little snake, but it is what it is. But it's nature.
He or she lost the genetic lottery.
And that's part of it. And it's necessary.
Yeah.
Maybe
I'm cold-hearted for that, but I think it's just more listening to ecology.
I think our view of nature is probably more realistic. You know what I mean? Like if you watch if you watch nature documentaries or you watch like at least old school nature documentaries and such,
the honest ones.
you'll see like my wife, she can't watch it. She can't swallow it. You know, I'll be watching it. I'm all into it. And you see this, like calf that was born and a lion just comes up and just like rips it as it's born. And I don't enjoy that, but I mean, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
That's just the reality of stuff, of nature.
100%. Yeah.
I saw a photograph of a zebra running through a river, like trying to escape this attack, and its like hind legs were completely ripped off. So it was just like intestines and shit flying out. This animal's got its two legs, and it's just running scared shitless. And there's a croc behind it, like, "Whoa, I'm gonna get you soon." And that's just how it goes, And like all these parents, like they don't want their kids to see the snake feeding. It's like, you're creating a big sissy. Like, let them experience what the world is. They need to know what this stuff is. It's formulative for their experiences. And the same thing probably goes for our snakes.
And it's funny how like I see people's perspective changes depending on which animal is. Nature is metal. as you're hearing, like, I don't know, Riley, quick, give me a crazy metal band.
Slayer.
You're hearing that.
Lamb of
God.
Yeah,
I guess you could pick Slayer,
Cannibal
but,
Corpse.
You're hearing that play.
Cannibal Corpse.
yeah, that's what I'm looking for. That kind of metal. But it's funny how your perspective changes depending on which animal is winning and which animal is losing, right? So typically, if I'm watching something and the lion is eating that calf, right? It's like, oh, I feel so bad for the calf, that mean lion. Why is it doing that? And I'm like, don't you understand? But the other day, we saw the opposite, where a lion was trying to eat a Cape buffalo, and it was pretty much getting gored as it was like jumping onto the back of this thing, because it was jumping at it from the front, and it's just kept scoring them in the stomach. And the lion is just like, and I felt bad for it. And now she's like, oh my God, that poor lion. Oh my God. I was like, wait, the other day you were saying that it's the poor gazelle, and now you're like, fuck the gazelle, the lion is one. It's like, oh my gosh.
It's very situational.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That's funny.
100%. You speak of that. This is a good transition. We gotta revisit the Woma blackhead thing that we kind of talked about with the heat pits, because but what led to some interesting insight, and I'm gonna let Mr. Aspidites below run with that. But before we say that, I was talking to Scott, right? And he called me up and he told me how we were wrong, and and I was like, yes, sorry, Scott. Thank you for the info. I didn't even think about that. Which is, I'm so glad that at least we have a Scott. Set it straight. For sure.
Gotta have a Scott.
Yes. But he was telling me about how his snakes that he keeps outside, how much tougher their skin is, and how much. It's almost like they feel different than a snake that you would keep in captivity, right? And I started to think, and this is where my mind starts to go and think, like, if they have exposure to different things, do they become? Are we making them more snake-like or less snake-like in our keeping? You know what I'm saying? Like, we're trying to make them something that they're not evolved to be, I guess, if that makes sense. And he was saying about how, and I thought about, like, well, this happens in Papuan pythons, the real deal. I don't know if you heard about this, but it's happened to Rob. I think a couple other people, Kevin, I think, talked about it as well. But their skin sort of just like comes off. They just, like, their skin is so soft, it just kind of like, even if you touch it, it just kind of comes away. It's kind of crazy. I've seen it in Burmese pythons too. So is not being exposed to, whether that's UV or whatever it would be, what is causing that? And maybe the cause is, again, having exposure to the sun. Maybe it makes you, somehow it makes their scales and skin tougher. I thought that was really interesting.
That is interesting. But I have not heard of the peeling skin, and I don't like that.
Yeah. Have you ever heard that, Riley, with the Papuans?
That's gross.
Oh man. Yeah. It's pretty, from what I understand, it's pretty common with that, especially young ones. It's pretty common with them, Rob has experienced it quite a few times, to the point when we did that episode with Kevin. It's Kevin, right? Yeah, Kevin. He sort of made a point to tell me to ask him that question. So if you go back and you listen to that show with him on Papuan pythons, he sort of hits on it. But interesting stuff. So you can run with the Aspidites.
Yeah. Oh. So last week we were talking about Aspidites, and we were talking about the fact that, a lot of people say they lack any external heat sensing pits, right? That's kind of the conventional knowledge. When people are talking about how different they are, they're like, they don't have the pits and they're the only ones, and it's for digging and eating cold-blooded prey. So then Scott messages us, and it's interesting because I had just picked up recently his book, and on the Woma section he mentions that they do in fact have a heat sensing organ under. The way I read it, I thought he was saying under a scale, but I guess what he meant is actually under, but not behind a scale, but just under. So what he let us know is that the Womas and the blackheads actually do in fact have a heat-seeking pit under their rostral scales. And that's very interesting because first I've heard people talk about it, and when I'm diving into the literature, the way I have been over the past few weeks, there's absolutely no mention of that in any of the academic papers and whatnot. So all I can find in terms of academic, papers on that is some reference that Derek Roddy posted on a forum like a long time ago to somebody verbally explaining the presence of that pit at a herpetological symposium or something like that. So it sounds like it was some German researchers, from what I can gather, that proved that organ had the right anatomy to be a heat-seeking thingy. Do you think would Scott mind if we show that? Or I don't know, they're his pictures.
Yeah, I think you're cool to show it. Yeah.
Okay, I sent it in the chat.
Yeah.
If you want to pull that up, Eric. But yeah, it's just kind of, when people that keep womas and blackheads, you probably have noticed, I definitely have, that they kind of do this thing and they just like look up at you with their neck. They don't do a full periscope, but they kind of just angle upwards. And with that in mind, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that they're kind of pointing this little mini pit on their upper jaw at you. And so, yeah, super interesting, super interesting. And I did talk to Nick recently, and he also said, heck yeah, they do. So there's two folks legitimizing that claim. So yeah,
and
that's a little zoom. And it is interesting that they would have that, because when we see the video of Aspidites digging, they actually do scoop with their bottom jaw, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like it would still get shit in it, but I guess not, so you know what I'm saying? Like they kind of scoop, like if this is their head, they do like this thing. So
yeah,
it almost seems like it being underneath is still in the path of fire, but I guess evolution would prove me wrong. Who am I to say?
Right.
So yeah. So I guess go ahead.
What were you gonna say? Good. No,
I was just gonna say, I guess all of that to say, long story short, they do have heat pits.
I had heard Derek talk about it, and I think he might have talked about it on the very first NPR that he was on. But he sort of, the way I understood it back then was that it was sort of like the hind limbs on, the spurs. Yes, you know what I mean. So it's kind of like, and I probably heard it wrong. He probably said it right, and I heard it wrong. But that's why I kind of thought that they don't have heat pits. But
so they're like still on their way out of evolving those out.
I guess that would be up for debate, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
Well,
that's kind of how
from the evolutionary bio standpoint, there's a few reasons to have them, right? If you're a python, one would be prey acquisition, which in the case of the womas and blackheads, we would assume it's slightly less important for them because they eat cold-blooded prey. But at the same time, that cold-blooded prey still will do a pretty good job of thermoregulating and will still have a heat signature, because we're not talking about 50-degree lizards, They might still be like 84 degrees or something, that'll show up.
Right.
And then the other that I can think of is using that as a way to gauge your environmental conditions, right? If you're looking for, say, a nest site, you might want to know if it's warm or cold. So, there's a few different angles, and in both cases, it still seems advantageous for womas and blackheads to be able to do that. I guess it just probably was an issue for them in terms of the digging and getting all plugged up.
Right.
But I don't know.
Has there been any have people found, like womas sort of do the digging part, but have blackheads been seen doing that equally the
There's
same?
A 2019 paper that caught it in the wild and cited the Brutton paper that found it in 2013. So They do.
You might have to send me that paper. I
Sure.
might need to add that into my Blackhead episode.
Yeah, we'll do. And from what I can tell, it's the same mechanic. It's kind of that neck, bottom jaw as the shovel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is so badass. I just think that's the coolest thing, you know.
Yeah.
One of my Wilmas, I didn't catch him in the act, but he moved a significant amount of substrate around to plug up the front of a half log hide.
Right.
And he like made it a completely closed off little thing, which is so cool. And I didn't see him do it, but I have to assume, you know, he might have been doing that kind of thing to push all that around. But I got to get a Wilma on sand. Like, just that'll be so cool. So I plan to
put a camera in there to film it, see what behaviors you capture. Yeah.
So here, if you're going to do that, are you going to go full sand? Are you going to go sand soil substrate? Like, what are you thinking with that? Have you thought about it?
I haven't put enough thought into it to know.
Right.
But yeah, what's holding me back from doing that is just sand is so heavy, and it's gonna be a pain in my second story apartment. But
just go to Home Depot and get a bag of play sand. But there's also like, you know, there's reptile products out there like Reptisoil made by Zoomed that like has sand in it, and you can mix that with more sand. And that stuff also has like peat moss and cocoa and spag and a few other things like that. So, you know, you could get creative and make stuff that could hold den shape, for example, or.
Yeah, it would just be interesting to see if they instinctively do that once opportunity is presented, like the video that Eric showed. But yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, I would be super excited to be watching that happen. Like, what? You guys would get like video clip after video clip. You'd be like, okay, we get everything. It's digging. Like, whoa.
That'd be the coolest thing to see, though.
Yeah.
That would be so neat to have like a big enclosure and offer, you know, the opportunity to go do that, and you catch it on film.
100%.
Yeah. They live in bird stats. That's funny. I would have called Fresno that, but never mind.
I don't know. Well, maybe Philadelphia is the East Coast version of
that. Maybe. That's crazy. Yeah, you could mix like play sand. Oh, pool filter sand. Cleaners usually smaller, but you'll have to get a bunch.
For sure.
Yeah.
Good point, Ryan. Did you guys see the article that was posted by the Rattlesnake Conservancy about snakes being able to hear?
Oh no.
Yes. I saw it. I didn't read it in depth yet, but yes, I did see that. Did you read it?
Yeah, and I've got it pulled up right here, and it's just 2 short paragraphs to really like, you know, quickly explain it. And they've got a diagram that shows the skeletal structure of the snake's head, and then they've got a second diagram below where they've x-rayed and then dyed and highlighted the internal structure that you can't see through the bone. And so, you know, obviously everybody kind of knows the old adage that snakes, they don't hear anything. We've sort of loosely assumed that they can feel vibrations from noise waves and sound waves and all this stuff, but like that was kind of it. So this post it basically says, unlike what common belief suggests, snakes can hear. You may be familiar with the 3 bones in the middle ear of mammals, which allow us to hear, the malleus, incus, and stapes. Snakes don't have that. Instead, they have just one middle ear bone called the columella. And so they have that highlighted in this this diagram here in green. The columella is connected to their lower quadrate bone, which is blue in the diagram. So it's like that little vertical part that connects to the lower jaw in the back. And that's what allows them to hear. So another common misconception is that snakes can only sense and hear vibrations through the ground with their jaw. They can also hear airborne sounds. However, they're not hearing airborne sounds like we do. Vibrations through the air, like people talking or keys on keyboard, hit the snake and are transferred into its body for the snake to process. They can't hear everything, though. They can only process sounds between 80 and 1,000 hertz. In contrast, we can hear sounds between 20 and 20,000 hertz.
Right.
So they can hear, but they can't necessarily hear a typical songbird, which transmits at 2,500 hertz and above.
Right.
Snakes use their hearing to detect predators and prey, so they can hear low frequency noises.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can somehow like share this in our chat or something, or if you can bring it up, Eric. I've shared it on my Facebook page because it was so wild to see. It was really cool to see the diagram. But yeah, basically your snakes can hear.
I've definitely noticed when I'm like jamming, when I'm playing guitar, that the snakes will come out and be like, what the hell, you know?
Nice.
So
yeah,
that
feel
frequency range. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, what'd you say? 50 to 1,000?
80 to 1,000.
80 to 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's kind of the low rumbly stuff. And
mm-hmm.
then the mids, like the really tinny sounds are around like 600 to 800.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I would imagine that allows them to hear maybe stomping of predators coming, or footsteps of prey, or certain sounds that might be necessary for them to evade or investigate further.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's quite a lot in that range. I don't know if anybody like plays in digital audio workstations. Like you can pull up your digital EQ and just like scan the frequency range. Like even sounds that are more anchored in the highs, like around the 1,500 range. Like there are aspects of that sound, there are overtones in the lower frequencies, so they could probably hear a whole bit. Just maybe sometimes they can only, if it's 1,000 or below, they're only hearing the lower harmonics of the sound. Like sounds weird. I minored in electronic music shit, and like a sound like my voice right now is not just one frequency. Like it's a amalgamation of different frequencies. So I would sound different to a snake that only hears 1,000 and below, but it would hear me even if I have frequencies above 1,000 in my. Anyway, I'm totally nerding out. Sorry.
No, that helped me sort of quantify it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Riley, what page is it on your Facebook page or?
Yeah, just on my personal page here. I'll tag you in it.
Ryan Cox. I've noticed the same when I plug in my uke and get funky with the pedal. Love that.
Country boy.
Okay.
They definitely hear drums.
Yeah.
Okay. So we want to share that picture. Okay, hold on one sec.
Yeah, it's got a really cool diagram that's worth checking out.
Ooh,
is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
That picture?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the top picture you can see sort of, it has a scan of the snake's skull, and then it's got the lower jawbone, the mandible, highlighted in red, and then the columella is the part that's highlighted in green. The columella is the green one. So that little tiny bone that connects from the jawbone that goes into that internal structure is essentially what's picking up the vibrations at those lower frequencies.
Huh.
I always forget how cool snake skulls look.
Yeah.
It's just so cool.
Got one on my arm, bro.
Oh. Dude, I want more tattoos, but my
Life
tattoo guy disappeared during COVID. He disappeared all his stuff.
There's more than one out.
I know, but I like that guy. It's like changing a hairdresser. It's sad,
I know.
You know?
I know. all of my work was done by my buddy Chris down in Santa Barbara. Oh, especially with tattoos. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, the world's become too expensive. I haven't gone under the needle in 3.5 years.
Wow. Yeah.
It's dude, it's a craving. Like I crave it.
Oh, it's addicting for sure.
Oh yeah.
The pain, it hurts so good.
I used to look forward to it once a month. I would go get another sitting on the portrait piece, and I just miss it so badly. And there's a lot more I want to do, but damn car, freaking black hole of money. Oh well.
I have to share this. So like I posted up. So Mike, the monitor guy, Mike's monitors, right? He posts up King Gorham, I'm just like, oh man, they're so cool. Look at another cool little monitor species. Add them to the list, maybe as one that I'll look at. Blah 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 blah. Another one on the list. He's like, Eric Burke, replace cowbell with monitors. I told you, bro. Guess what?
I got a fever.
Baby.
Very good.
Oh man, yeah, monitors, dude. They're addicting. They're really addicting.
So funny thing is, right? Owen comes over the weekend, right? And this is the first time he saw my Ackies and whatnot.
Oh.
And, he's like, all right, let me see it. In true Owen form, he's like, all right, let me see what you're talking about. What's the big deal? Blah 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 blah. I'm like, come on, man, come in here, come here, look. And it just so happened that the one was out, and I was like, oh, thank God, because otherwise he's just gonna look at this empty terrarium,
right?
Or whatever. So then it's like running around and like looking at him and whatever. It's like, oh, it's a different monkey that's looking at me today. What's going on? What is this here? And he's just like, oh yeah, that is pretty cool. And then I like threw in some crickets and it was like chasing them down and ripping them apart and stuff. And he's like, okay, I get it. it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
They're freaking cool, man. We've got a bunch of baby Savannah monitors in at the shop. They're like this big. And you throw crickets in there and just boom, an explosion. And just watching them hunt and thinking about what their perspective is when they're that little is like the coolest thing.
Yeah. I saw the other day, I noticed, right? I throw in a bunch of crickets and the one is like, it bites the one cricket and then another one comes walking by and it just like shakes it real quick and puts it down and grabs the other one and shakes it real quick and puts it down. And it's just like killing all these crickets, but it went back and it ate them all. I'm like, wow, it's probably like, to me, that shows that
like
they're
a squirrel
thinking.
storing nuts.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Talk about the squirrel. We talked about the squirrel, too.
Oh, God.
I thought about Owen today. I thought about him.
So some squirrels?
Well, I see squirrels all the time, but driving out to the vet, the city made like this squirrel highway across the freeway. It's like this net suspended across. I'm like, that can only be for fucking squirrels. It's like, Owen's kin.
What were you gonna say, Lucas? You were gonna say something.
Oh, I was just gonna say that story reminded me of the shitty new Jurassic World movies where they're like, "Oh, it's killing for fun." It's like the like GMO dinosaur they create. Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Whose idea was that?
GMO dinosaur.
How do you ruin such a good concept of a franchise?
Man. That's too funny. That's too funny. See, this is my favorite part of my week is this show right here. Because not only do we get to connect with people outside of our little bubble, so it feels like COVID is on pause. But then I get to hear perspectives from people that say shit like that, where I'm like, I would have never heard that all week, but instead I'm here and I did, and it was freaking gold.
Monsantosaurus, yeah.
Yes. Welcome to Jurassic: The New World. Brought to you by
Monsanto
and Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's too funny. That's too funny.
Oh yeah, agreed. This is great.
It's probably true.
Yeah, it probably is. If you think about it.
Yeah.
Oh man. So I got a question, Eric. Since you're kind of in this mental shift about your keeping and where you're headed in your direction, and you have this, from my perspective, it seems like you have this newfound clairvoyance that kind of has come from traveling and being locked down and having checked all the boxes and having this collection and gone through all these motions and experiences with all these different species. What do you think people as a whole, as keepers of their species that they love, what do you think? I don't know if there is an answer, but what do you think it is that needs to happen in reptile keeping, as far as people just being honest with themselves and their trajectory and where they should end up, whether it's with carpets or not? I mean, carpets are the best, so everybody who's not ending up on carpets is doing it wrong. But aside from that, like you've gone through this trajectory, you have this hindsight. What would you tell somebody that's like so overwhelmed with the reptile hobby as it is and the amount of species and what you can do and how you can go down these rabbit holes? What would be like a little golden nugget of like, hindsight is 2020 in this reptile world?
So I recently had this with North American colubrids, right? where, and you guys know this because I talk to you, right? It's like you start talking to people and you sort of, if you're talking to the right people, whatever species they're working with or they're excited about, it gets you excited, and you're like, well, I want to be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of start to go down the rabbit hole and you start to look at stuff, and then you see, because there's so many cool species to work with, and it, I think in all of us, I think there's something about reptile keepers that we have this, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but we have like this hoarding mentality, or like complete the set. I got it. It's like complete the set thing, or like, I have to work with all these species and whatnot. I think the thing that I've learned the most is like, I get so focused on figuring out what's next that I don't appreciate what I have right now. And like, I think that like, for me, I'm trying to appreciate what I have right now. Like when I think about, Eric from 2002, it was a dream to own an inland carpet, a Darwin carpet, a rough scale. It was just a dream. Like, to me, it's like, it's sort of like what we think about with Owen Pellies now. It's like, will that ever happen? I don't think so, but man, they're cool snakes. You know what I mean? So you sort of have this like, I don't know, you have this idea that, you always want that other thing. And, for North American colubrids, how I personally tick the box is field herping. Like field herping sort of like lets me appreciate them in a different way. And I don't have to worry about somehow cutting my collection down or somehow like not taking or let me put it this way. I don't have to worry about compromising care because I want to be a part of the people that you're hanging around, and if they keep a different species, right? I think that for me, that's why I like to sometimes step outside of my world and talk to other people that don't necessarily keep things that I keep. And I think that if the reptile community did more of that, we would have more open-mindedness, more of an open mind with how we approach things and just with each other. I think that if the reptile like community would just keep what they want and not worry about what other people are keeping and keep what gets them excited, then all of the species would be sort of put into the, like everybody would be working with the things that are in the hobby, because you're going to have people that are passionate about, gargoyle geckos, and you're going to have people that are passionate about, diamond pythons, and some people love poplin pythons, and some people like milk snakes, king snakes, you name it. Like, I don't know, just I don't know. I guess that would be sort of like how I sort of cope with that, and sort of have a vision of where your collection is going to go. Like, what do you ultimately want to do? Where do you ultimately want to see yourself in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, and sort of plan out what you want to do. I think if you focus on what you want and what brings you excitement and what brings you enjoyment, ultimately that's going to make for the best lives for the animal, because you're going to be tuned into what they're doing. If you don't get excitement, like I never understood, and this is why I couldn't do it as a business, because I never understood the idea of like, well, I breed these because they make me money.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you like that species, but we've all talked to people that do it and they don't like the species they're working with. Like, how are you going to pass that along or sell that to somebody else when you don't like it?
Disingenuously. That's,
yeah. I don't know if that answers the question, but
no, it did.
Absolutely.
That question was kind of loaded because it wasn't a yes or no or a clean answer, short and sweet sort of thing. It was really going to vary from person to person who it's asked. But, I think a lot of people go through their trajectory where they're like, okay, they just find out about it and there's the the honeymoon phase where everything's just novel and exciting, and then they get to a point where they're over obsessed with the online stuff, and then they come back to what they love, and then they get to a point where like, what's next? And I think about the legacy I want to leave behind and where I want to be with keeping reptiles and what I want to have and look back on in 20 years, and when it's okay to morally decide to cut out a species or add something, or if you're going to be one of those hyper focused people that only stays in one lane. And I think about that all the time, and how it pertains to this sort of like social media created taboo and approach to keeping that is very much like a race, like a show off sort of thing. And just, I don't know. I think about that and how it affects people's collections and decision-making processes, and then how the progression of the hobby adds a layer of influence on that. And I just, it's always changing. Everything's in flux, and I don't know. I constantly am reevaluating my collection and thinking about that in the future, and what responsibilities we have to some of these species. And I don't know, there isn't really an answer to satisfy the question, you know what I mean? It's always changing. Sure. So I think that's something that more keepers should really think about, because it's really easy to get caught up in the excitement and the energy that's contagious in the reptile little circles and bubbles everywhere. And I think you nailed it, mentioning, people breeding stuff just for money, but not because they love it. And
or acquiring the trendy thing at the time, right? Like, the thing that everybody seems to be getting into, and you're like, oh, I need that. But it's the most frustrating thing for me sitting on the outside when I see somebody shelling out tons of money just to get a species so they can say they have that species. And be like,
I
feel like last year it was Sanzinia. It's just like bam, 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 bam.
Yeah. And like Doomerals had that little wave of it. And now it's like lace monitors. Like, you're not cool
black
unless
milk
you have
snakes.
Yeah. Like all these things. It's just like, dude, you really like them, or are you getting into it because like
for the status thing?
These other people are really excited and they get a lot of attention, so you want some of that attention.
Yeah, I think that just zeroing in on what actually is your species, right? It might not only be one, but like what you are passionate about, like that really, I think, resonates with me as being the key. And then, like maybe for some people, they really can just do that with one species. Maybe for somebody else, it's maybe more like me, where like 4 species are my favorite species. Right. But you're still keeping them because they resonate with you, not because of any superficial like external reasons. I don't care if people think false water cobras are lame, or Brettles pythons are, oh, everybody has those now. Like, that's not why I keep because they resonate with me, and I find their natural history and behaviors and just fascinating.
Imagine if there was no social media, there was no sharing photographs, there was no Instagram. You still had access to information, the internet still existed, but this like social atmosphere didn't exist. How different would your collection be if that were the case, and you never had it, and you didn't have those external influences, and you were subject to your own devices and exploration?
Aspen IDs.
It's funny you say that, because I experienced that. I lived that when I was younger. I lived through that, not having, like, when I was growing up in the reptile hobby, there was no internet, there was no social media. You would be lucky. I mean, like the coolest thing for me was going to Philadelphia Herp Society, right? And meeting people that kept like, oh shit, there's actually other people that keep reptiles. Like, to me, it was just a thing that me and my dad did. You know what I mean? That was kind of what it is. And now that I was thinking about that, probably the biggest shift for me is my dad coming back into the hobby. And I'm sitting there, we're drinking a beer, we're just shooting the shit. I'm super excited that he's back into it and keeping animals and excited about it again. And, again, I say this all the time, but it amazed me with like, no, he doesn't have Facebook. He's not on Facebook. He doesn't even know what Instagram is.
Right.
So like, he's 70 years old. So like he's building naturalistic vivariums from scratch with no direction, no book, no nothing, like just his knowledge of the environment and reptiles, and saying, okay, what does this reptile do? What does it need? Oh, look, they have that. Oh, look, and then like he built it, and it's just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like super impressed with that. And like, we're sitting there and he says to me, he's like, yeah, I don't understand why you have your snakes in racks, or he calls them bins or whatever. He's like, I don't understand that because you never get to see them. What the hell's the point of keeping them if you don't get to see them?
Right.
And I'm like, well, goddamn, you're right.
I think one thing that would only be beneficial is if the hobby could pivot towards viewing the animals more as a piece of an ecosystem and like an animal rather than like a piece of art or an object to be collected, if you will. I think that would only be a good thing.
I see a lot of people that treat reptiles as like a commodity and a novelty just from the pet store, because like they're common people coming into it and they literally treat them like a trinket, where like if it dies, they're like, oh, I just did something bad. Like it's a plant. Like they don't feel bad.
Right.
It's interesting how that
even the fish people don't look at fish that way. Like
fish people are diehards, man. I remember when I was, buttering up my parents to get my first snake. Like you were saying, Eric, there wasn't social media or anything. I remember when my mom brought our first computer home, and it like had to boot up for super long, take hours to get on the internet, and you had to make sure you weren't using the phone and all this stuff. But it wasn't used for sending photos or anything. Like if I wanted to go learn about snakes Tuesday after school with my dad, we'd go to the library, and spend an hour pulling books out or whatever. Or, I'd get books for my birthday and Christmas and stuff. And you go look at that stuff, and it's all like old reptile books. And that's where I got all that information from. I didn't know anything about Australian reptiles as a kid. What I knew was what was around me and what the native books talked about was native to me. So naturally, I ended up with a California king snake as my first snake, and just went down the rabbit hole that way. And then, as the hobby grew, I remember learning about bearded dragons and leopard geckos and having those with my brother, and seeing an albino berm when those things first came to the States at a shop, and all this stuff, and not really understanding the bigger picture out there that we see now, because it's literally thrust upon us in our pockets from, cell phones and social media and everything. And it's just, it's different, where like, if you think about why people kept reptiles back then, it was so much more genuine because there was no social taboos or clout chasing or anything. And now you have to dissect between newcomers. Are they really in it because they like this, or are they doing this because they just want to make a name for themselves and have attention and fame and numbers or whatever statistic that, they chase. And that's kind of been like the most apparent thing for me lately. And it's just, so it makes me think about, why are people really keeping? Why am I really keeping? Do I really want to keep all of this? Do I want more? Do I need it? And I'm just constantly like introverted and retrospective about all that.
It's good to be.
I think it's exactly. I think if you're doing that, you're trying to figure out what's best for the animal rather than what's best necessarily, for you, I guess, like Bolin's pythons to me is one of those things, right? To me, it's like, I get it, but in the same the same breath, I feel like they only have this mystique about them because everybody wants to be the person that does it.
Right.
And then I think that the thing that gets lost there is you got guys like Keith. Keith is 100% authentically mesmerized by these animals. Like mesmerized by, like, I mean, and you can just read his posts where he's thinking about when he was breeding birds and like, how does that equate into keeping Bolins? But like, I mean, he's thinking so far outside the box in order to figure out, like, why is this species so difficult to breed in captivity? Like, what is it about this thing? So like, like I know sometimes like my exposure to people with Bolin's pythons are guys like him and Ari, right? So Ari's traveling halfway around the world, climbing mountains, getting malaria in a hut, right? And to try to figure out to get more information about these animals. I mean, I don't know how more passionate you can be than that. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's the real deal. And then you guys like Keith, who's sort of like trying to, you know, pick his brain to like, I mean, like the details that he's focused on, like Ari would send a video and, you know, Keith is looking at that video as if he was walking in that environment. And like, I mean, to just be around that guy and to be exposed to his brain has changed the way I think about reptiles in the biggest way. He is the biggest influence on me than anything, you know, and he probably doesn't even know that, but like, and I don't keep what he keeps. We don't keep the same thing. He keeps mostly emerald tree boas and stuff. You know what I mean? But like, he can still get like, he gets super excited when I'm talking about locality carpets. I'm like, Keith, look at this one they found, you know, look at this one they found. And he's like, oh, where's that from? Oh my God. You know, it looks like the one you showed me. So he's generally getting as excited about it and doesn't really keep carpets or anything like that, you know, but yeah, I don't know. What's this say? Eric, you feel and think that way because you've been, yeah, I guess so. I'm more mature. I'm like a fine aged wine, I guess. I don't. But yeah, it's. I think you have to kind of go through these different things. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting a species that you're excited about and then realizing that it's not the species for you.
Yep.
Right. Yep. I've done it many times. I don't know if you guys have done it, but it's happened, you know,
for sure.
So ultimately I'm trying to figure out like what that species is that I would want to keep until it's dead.
Yeah. I think that I've been on that same wavelength in terms of thought and leaning towards blackheads being my thing.
Yeah. I think about it a lot in terms of my Brazilian rainbow boas because I've been keeping them for years. I've bred them several times. I set myself up to have some goals of breeding some generations, and they're a couple of years around the corner. But I also have this love for carpets, and I also have limited space, and I constantly reevaluate, do I really love rainbow boas? And then the other thing that gets at me is like, if I were to not keep them, what would that do to the community? What would that do to the folks that have bought rainbows from me or folks that are interested in the rainbows? And I wouldn't want to, you know, take something away from that, like one more valued breeding stock or another source of good unrelated animals. But it's not like they're a species that's in danger of disappearing. So, you know, I don't really like feel that concerned about it. But then at the same time, like I genuinely really enjoy seeing a huge litter of rainbow boas born and seeing the maternal stuff. But at the same time, I've also done it a few times. You know, the other milestones that I have to check off would be breeding something that I produced, creating my own line, you know, so there are other things I can do, but how much of my focus is on them right now compared to some of these other species. And it all comes down to space. Like ultimately I wouldn't be so pressed to figure this out if I had room for these animals to, you know, secure their future and stuff. So like, if I'm stuck here in this spot, then I have to cut some stuff out, but I am trying to buy a house. So I think about like, oh, it'll all, you know, I'll just make it work until I get there. And then when I get there, what am I going to do? Do I want to keep going with it? Or is the fact that I'm already questioning that species a red flag that I'm done?
I feel like it's a really good thing to check in with yourself, right? And kind of identify what those species are for you at the time. But that's not to say it's not going to change, right? Like just going with Keith, like he used to be the short tail guy, right? And he just, you know, knocked that out for a long time and then decided it was time for something different. And that's okay. You know, like you don't have to.
Yeah. Because I'm sitting here going like, those 2 cages would be nice for growing Apodora in. This whole rack would be great for some more grow out carpets.
Like to put it this way, like if Brett Bender showed up at my door with a machete and said he was taking all of my snakes, but I could keep one species,
Right.
today, I'd keep the black
Walnuts.
cats.
It changes
But
every day.
that's not to say that it'll be the same answer. Yeah, in the future,
And then there's the other aspect of it that I don't know if you guys ever think of it in terms of like how it affects so when people get interested about a species because they saw your contagiousness and passion and energy, and then you decide that your time with that species is done. I think about what my leaving a species would potentially do for the people that have bought into that project. Would they feel like betrayed, or like they don't have a resource to go to anymore, or that maybe it's not as important because that guy isn't into it anymore, and they got excited about it. When I got rid of my Amazon tree boas, I had folks tell me like, I can't believe you're getting rid of Amazons, even though I only had them for like 2-3 years. Mm-hmm. I didn't do anything with them, but like I needed space. They weren't my jam. But somebody else got so geeked because they saw them with my channel or something.
Well, here's a question back at you. If Nick Mutton decided that today he was going to sell all of his carpet pythons, would you?
Hell no.
No.
There you go.
and the other point is he would still be a resource, and you can still be a resource. Your knowledge doesn't leave with the animals.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. Like I'm not making any decisions right now. That's the other thing. Like sleep on it is something I think about all the time. But
you're getting rid of all your snakes? Can I have your cages?
Hell no. Hell no. I ain't getting rid of nothing.
For me, right? It took me a long time to get to this spot, right? And it took me a long time to try to figure this out. And who knows, it may change in years, but I just don't see it changing for me because it's been at least 15 years now that, I love Australia. I don't know what it is about it. I don't know what it is but when I went there, it's kind of like, I know this is going to sound corny, but it's like I felt at peace with the world. I don't know how else to put it. It felt like I should be here, and like I was just fascinated by everything. Right. When I talked to Nipper about this, and like, I don't have that same attention to detail in my own backyard, and I probably should, but for whatever reason, just being exposed to I've only been there 2 times, right? I mean, basically I've been there a month. Right. And it's like, there's just something about the wildlife is so unique there, and it's just a play. And it's if I want a piece of that so that I can come home from work and I want to go into my snake room or reptile room or whatever you want to say, I want to be able to just enjoy those animals, see those behaviors, and get back to that when I had that, when I was just coming back into the hobby, I would sit there for hours. Maybe I'd be reading a book and just chilling out or whatever, or I'd be listening to music or just watching it, like that feeling that we all had when we were kids getting into this and just staring at the tank, like looking at what was in that tank and being mesmerized by what that was. I'm sure growing up with Steve Irwin probably even just put the nail into the coffin for me for Australia, right? Mm-hmm. Because when I was coming up into my formative years, everything was about Steve Irwin, Australia, Animal Planet, everything Australia, you know what I mean? So I'm sure that just pushed it to solidify that for me. But
sure.
So that's why I am where I am,
It's awesome. And I guess, my turn to go hippie, and I went to UC Santa Cruz. I'm not afraid to be hippie, but
okay.
It's just, you found a place that energizes your spirit, right? And like how much of life is just chasing a feeling, even if it's something you only felt for a second and you're just desperately trying to get it back. Like that's what actually makes you present and makes you feel like you're actually living your life instead of just being the floating head. And you're like, how the hell did 3 years just go by? Like so I think it makes total sense. And I think that when you find something like that, you are doing yourself a disservice if you're doing anything but, pursuing that, that thread, why why not?
Sure.
Yeah, the reason why I bring this up is not only because it is good to revisit and discuss and reevaluate and assess and kind of hone your trajectory all the time, but I find myself, thinking about what I want in the future and what I want my collection to look like. And as much as I love diversity, you can't have everything. And I find myself, looking at the different species I have and evaluating why they're here, why I keep them, why I still work with them, what are my goals, things like that. And with rainbow boas in particular, I find myself saying, well, they're beautiful. I enjoy them. They're pretty to look at. I don't ever handle them. I let them be. I just care for them. And they sell really well. And I produce them with minimal effort. And they do really well. And they fund stuff here. And instantly I'm aware of the fact that some of my reasonings that I just listed have to do with paying for the other stuff.
Right.
And what I've just sort of spoken without maybe necessarily realize is that they're not my priority. I love them. They're wonderful. I make beautiful animals with them. They are beautiful. I cherish these animals. But am I really into them like I am with carpets? And if you'd asked me that a few years ago, yeah, I'd tell you like they're the bee's knees. And now I find myself like, obviously Morelia entrenched. But then I also, I've got this interest in Crebos and Apodora and
your Mad Hogs and whatnot.
Yeah, but like even then, like I start like thinking about like if stuff had to go, like if I had to chop something out, what would be the last to go? And what that means for me is it puts things in a spectrum and a bit of a hierarchy. And I've done that over the years because it's always been space constraints, but I don't ever see myself getting rid of Morelia or Papuan carpets or Crebos for that matter. But like, I love the Mad Hogs. I love the rainbows. I get a lot of satisfaction out of them, but why am I doing them? Like for the Mad Hogs, it's because I feel like I want to, unlock them a little bit more, but now I see other people keeping them and figuring it out. It's like, maybe there isn't as much pressure for me mentally with that species. So, how would I feel cutting them out to make room for Morelia? And that's the question I'm constantly asking myself. And it's pretty painfully obvious that Morelia are the top for me. Right there with Apodora. Like Apodora, I couldn't pick between like a Papuan carpet or a Papuan python, to be honest right now. Like I really couldn't, because I think about why I love carpets and what got me into them and why I love Apodora and what got me into them. And those two experiences, they're two very profound experiences that are on the same playing field as far as how impactful they were on me. And that's why those species are here. And I think about the other ones and why they're here. And over the years, how have my feelings changed about the hobby and these species and what I'm doing and my goals. And it's just, there isn't an answer for me right now. And I don't have, there's some uncertainty about the future. And that's what's making me ask this a lot. And it's just something I think that, I always appreciate getting outside perspective on.
So, Owen is, I don't want to speak for him, but I can and you guys kind of know this, right? For years, in the early years, he kind of kept coastal carpets, and he had maybe, I don't think he had any jungles. I think it was the majority was like coastal carpets, right? And he had like a couple like king snakes and corn snakes, and that was sort of his collection. And as we were progressing in NPR, and as the years would go by, we're exposed to more and more people, and you get that itch, right? You're talking to people, they have X, and then you sort of like want X. And Owen sort of struggled with the same thing. And he sort of was like, wanted to get into colubrids, and like he sort of like hesitated to do that because he felt that somehow people wouldn't look at him the same as being the guy on NPR. And to Lucas's point earlier, I kind of said the same thing to Owen, like, dude, just because you're now working with colubrids doesn't mean that you don't have the information still about keeping carpets. You know, like Eugene Bissett, you can still ask him about keeping green trees, even though he doesn't keep green tree. You know what I mean? Or Burmese python's probably a better example. You know, I remember him on NPR saying that's like his favorite snake, and if he could work with any snake, that would be the one. But you know, he feels not that's not commercially viable, and it's probably not the responsible thing to do. So he doesn't breed them. But you know, that's sort of his snake, and he's approaching it from a strictly business point of view. And you know, Owen sort of was like, you know, and then once he started getting it and seeing that people didn't like lose anything for him, if anything, he became more of the go-to guy because he experienced stuff outside of the carpet python world, whereas at the time I was sort of just into like it was carpet pythons and that was my collection, you know, maybe some scrubs, you know, back and forth here and there, but you know, at the time they were all Morelia. So his experience with things and his exposure to other people that are outside of our circle would immediately be drawn to Owen instead of me, because they're looking at him as the guy that has a more diverse collection. And he's super excited about, you know, cave dwelling rat snakes. And I'm just like, I don't get it, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's his thing. And I get excited for him about it, but that doesn't mean that like we can't talk reptiles and I can't listen to his experiences with, you know, dealing with, you know, whatever he's dealing with as far as, you know, these big colubrids that shit and bite the shit. You know what I mean? It's just, that's his wheelhouse, you know? Yeah. And I'm glad that he's finally gotten to a spot where he sort of is sort of happy with what he has rather than trying to make other people happy with what he has, if that makes sense. You know?
Yeah. I find myself being internally torn and pulled in two directions, wanting to complete my carpet set and wanting to focus, you know?
Yeah. It's hard, man. It's hard, you know? And I'm sort of at that, we were talking about it before we started, and it's sort of like, you know, I don't know if I want to do the carpet morph thing anymore. Like if I'm not doing this if it's not a business and I'm not into selling snakes, why do I care if I have a albino caramel zebra? Like why? Like what's the point? You know?
And that's the question, you know, and everybody's answer to that question will be their own, you know? So I would much rather have that blue tongue skink and experience that, or the Ackies, than have that, you know, albino caramel, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't mean that I don't. Right. That doesn't mean that I don't like morphs. That doesn't mean that I'm anti-morph. That doesn't mean any of that. It just means that I guess I'm just at a different point, you know?
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think, to say that anyone's collection is static and will never change is silly, but it's also hard to imagine some of that change at times.
Yeah. No, I can relate. Like I have no intention of getting rid of any of the brittle stuff that I have that, you know, will throw stripes and stonewash and hypo, you know. I think that's great, but in terms of like, if I could add, you know, 10 setups right now and add animals, like they would all probably not be morphs. So that's just what I'm interested in now, you know, and that doesn't mean I don't look forward to seeing what a stonewash stripe looks like in person. You know, it just means that my priorities for the future have shifted, you know, and that's fine. That's good. That's progress.
Yeah. And I'm sort of the same way. It's like, and again, maybe this is the seeing the natural, not that I've seen a natural Bradley in the wild or anything like that, you know, that would be a dream, but like, you know, sure. It's kind of like that blackhead that they found, right? You know, in 10 years ago, I would probably spotted calico, peppery, sugar looking
crazy
thing.
Yeah.
Cool looking snake. Very, very cool looking snake. But at the same time, I'm like, oh yeah, but what's wrong with just the blackhead? Like, I mean, do you really need to change anything?
I got a magic golden ticket from the Australian government that's like, you can have one blackhead from the wild. I'm picking a normal one. I'm not picking the speckled one, but it's cool to see it. You know, it's like the albino whale or whatever, the like one white whale that's swimming around. It's like, well, that's cool, but you know what? Okay.
Yeah. That's all it's going for it. Yeah. I don't know. It's just the never ending internal evaluative discussion, struggle, whatever you want to call it.
I think that eventually you do get to a point where you start to become content. I am very, very, very close to being at that spot. Like there's just a few things that I would like to work with more. Like, I was thinking about this the other day, right? Like I'm thinking about, I'm thinking about jungle carpets, right? And of course I like my lightning line because it's a line that's not out there or whatever, and probably would even be interested in adding the MI line or what is it? MIA? What is it? MIA line at some point. But I got to be honest, man, I get more jazzed over the locality jungles, even if they're not legit. I don't care. Like, I look at the Palmerston that I have, and it's got the black belly, and it's like solid black with these little portholes, and then like this golden stripe down its back. Dude, I mean, what more do you need? And then if you want the ivory version of that, you sort of have the gelatin. It's already ivory. What do you mean? What do you? And it's not to take away from the beauty of the ivory.
Sure.
But like for me, it's like, okay, so I could have the Russian tiger locality, Yakibori Depot, Rockhamptons, Port Douglas, Brisbane's, then for the Palmerstons, the Tullys, and the Gelatins for jungles, and like. If that's all I could keep, I would be happy with that and not having any other type of, coastal or jungle,
for sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think for me, I need to, my contentment will come when I can say that I've worked with every single group of Morelia and like have my Morelia room and then have the Apodora room.
There you go.
I think that's just what I need, and that's what's gonna make me happy.
Yeah.
But then I see these Dumerose boas, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. See these Cribos, oh, those are really cool. See these corn snakes, those are kind of fun, So it's like just a balance.
It's been my test. It's kind of like I kind of like sit on it for a week. I like because when you posted those Dumerals, I was like, oh wow, yeah. I would love to work with them. They're cool. I would love to stare at them in a box. Like, yes, they're pretty badass,
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'm going to think about this a week from now.
Yeah.
And then I come back a week later and it's just like, yeah, they're cool, but I'm not going to keep them.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. If I think it would be much easier for me to stay focused if I knew that there was like some reassurance, like there's somebody out there for that species, so it's never going away. I don't know.
I think you sort of had that drilled in your head from like guys like myself or Nick, or Nick's have said that a lot. Why don't people keep Maclots? And I think his message was sort of
I have those too.
Was sort of like taken in what he's trying to say is like, like why do you need to make a morph that looks like a Maclots when you can just have a Maclots?
Right.
And like that hobby, like from his experience, right? He sort of saw duns come and go. You sort of see these species like rings could come and go. And like, it's like a couple people working with them. And if they decide that they quit, then it's done.
Right.
Well, then maybe it's done. Like maybe they're just not.
Yeah, meant for
what I mean? Like there's some animals that are, like dragon snakes, right? They're just not really made for captivity. I would that's my thought, right?
Yeah,
it's like some are made, some are not made.
There can be an element of round hole, square peg.
That's true. That's true. Right. That's a good point.
Working with all those different species of pythons, it's legit to say that some of them just suck. They just suck, and that's why they're not that popular. They're beautiful snakes, but they just suck in captivity. Unless you're into, either getting bit all the time or like you don't have it dialed in correctly, or you know what I mean? It's like you're so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Some just suck.
Yeah. But Eric,
I
want
leave the show
all of the snakes. I want all of them. Every single freaking one.
Sea snakes.
Sea snakes. Yeah, that's a perfect example. Yeah, some they're just not made for, keeping them in captivity. And Justin's a perfect example. Like, look at him, man. Nobody gives two shits about Baird's rat snakes, right? But this guy is like got to be the most passionate dude that I've ever met about these rat snakes. And like, I mean, he's just constantly like Baird's rat snakes, Baird rat. He doesn't give a shit if they're $2, $10, $1,000, $10,000. It doesn't matter. He digs these snakes. And I think that's what you sort of have to find. And when you find that, you'll know it. And that's what you run with,
Yep. And then if you find it and you decide it's blackheads, you cry because you'll never have any savings in your life. And it's just going to be a miserable existence of poverty.
Yeah. Yeah. Notice the blackheads are the last ones for me to get.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, well, put that one off another year. Put that one off another year.
Oh, boy.
But, I think the writing's on the wall for me. I just got to open my eyes a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. Rob talked to me about this a couple years ago, right? And he sort of said to me, he's like, we went back and forth because Rob's the same way, man. He's worked with so many species of reptiles, like so many different. I mean, he's worked with more species of reptiles than I know about. You know what I mean? Like know on a good scale. And he just like, he decided that he wasn't getting enjoyment out of it anymore because he was keeping too many and it became too much of this and too much of a hat, and there was no enjoyment out of it anymore. Yep. So he did what, people dread doing, and he sold a good chunk of his collection. And like within a week, he's like, dude, this is the greatest thing that I ever did. And, I'm sitting there going, but I don't want to jump. I know. He's like, come on, man, jump off the cliff with me. And I'm like, no, I'm afraid.
I like my Jags up here.
Yeah. He's like, nah, I'm telling you, man, cut the collection down. He's like, this is what you need to do. And probably because he knows me so well. And he's like, you need to stop doing this shit. Stop doing the morph, stop doing the Jag, stop doing all that, and just sort of focus on this and dial it down. And I'm telling you, you're going to be 1,000 times happier with your collection. And he was right. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that'll be our note that we end on. You got to trust your gut.
Yes, I didn't want to end on that other.
Listen to the good influences in your life that are speaking, because you might just have to read between the lines and see it.
Right.
And
there you go.
You owe it to yourself and the animals to check in and be introspective and make sure that you know what you're doing and why.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a little bit of the big picture with this whole conversation.
Yeah. No.
Nice.
All right. Yeah. Well, I've got to get my car over to the shop here soon. So let's see who wants to rattle off our closing list of all the NPR network shows that you can find for your reptile audio endeavors.
All right, I'll give it a shot.
All right. Lucas is like, no, not me yet.
All right. So the website is MoreliaPythonRadio.com. Obviously, if you're listening to this, we also do a live stream on the NPR Network YouTube channel. So go over there and subscribe. You can follow the NPR Network on Facebook and Instagram. Our email is info@MoreliaPythonRadio.com. We also have the Teespring store, which is NPR Network. And we also have the Patreon, which I think we're going to do maybe our first second tier episode either next Sunday or next Sunday. We can't do the following Sunday because it's Easter and probably a lot of people won't be there. But yeah, it's gonna be coming up. So if you're interested in supporting us, go over and check that out. Riley does a much better job at talking about the Patreon. But as far as the podcast, to go over to subscribe and share is Carpet Cliff Notes, Colubri Corner, Student of the Serpent, Carpets and Coffee, which you're listening to now. Of course, the original, the OG, and Morelia Python Radio. The Humans of Herpetoculture, which is
I'm doing one of those
Lucas's.
next week.
Oh, sweet. Is it with Justin?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, yes. Nice. Love that dude.
Yeah.
And
Happy
then
birthday, Justin.
Oh yeah.
yeah, happy birthday, Justin.
Doc.
And we have the Field Herping podcast coming up. That's actually got pushed to April release, and then it's going to be monthly, is what we're going to do. And we also have the Monitor Keeping podcast coming up. We have some guys working on that. And then there's a couple other ones that are in the works, but yeah, that's the list. So
Yeah,
Beautiful.
that was a lot.
Good stuff.
That was a lot.
Well done. Well done.
Yes.
Right. You can find me on all of the thingies at Centralian Exotics, and that's it. Yeah.
That was a mouthful, Lucas. That was a lot. You okay?
Gotta take
there?
a drink, bro.
Riley, where are you?
You can find me on the least sensational YouTube channel ever, just under my name, Riley Jimison. If you really like boring reptile content, and then just Riley's Reptiles on all the social media stuff. And yeah, so for the Patreon stuff, for anybody who's listening, there is a Patreon for the NPR network. There's the general support tier for $5, so you can buy us a cup of coffee. The second tier that we launched not too long ago is the Inland Carpet tier that gets you access to a private once a month Q&A live hour stream between all four of us, Lucas, Eric, Owen, and myself. So yeah, we are tentatively looking at next Sunday. We have a list of everybody who's there. So just keep an eye on your emails. We'll try and send out an email ahead of time for that stream with link and everything, and get you the info as far in advance as possible. But yeah, so don't forget to go support Eric and Owen and their decade and continuing amount of devotion to the herpetoculture world. And thank you for tuning in this week, and we will catch you guys next week for some more carpets and coffee, and as well as all the other stuff and content we put out. Thank you guys for continuing the support, and we'll keep putting it out, and we'll see y'all next week.
Heck yeah.
Good luck with your car. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Damn,
awesome.
All right, later, guys.
All right, see you.
Bye.